I believe as a filmmaker, it's my responsibility and duty to make a difference with my skill set. I was worried that by taking time to work on a passion project, that my day-to-day life and the day-to-day business would suffer.
Not only did you find the time to produce the film and actually make it, but it's now in cinemas.
You just got to start the process. And I just said, oh, I'm going to start. I don't have the finances to make this film. I don't even know exactly what it's going to look like.
How do you get people to buy into an idea that they haven't fully seen yet?
I learned very early on that if you learn how to sell and you learn how to sell effectively, you have your entire destiny in your hands. You really do.
How do I go from a conceptual idea of, hey, I want to do this thing, to actually getting people to back it and put their hand in their pocket?
Well,
if you want to spend more time working on passion projects rather than just client work, then today's episode is for you. I'm speaking with Jay, who recently created a feature film which is now being released in cinemas nationwide in the UK. Jay was a client of mine about 4 or 5 years ago, and I remember him telling me about this project that he wanted to do. And today's conversation is about exactly how he went from an idea all the way through to a feature film which is in cinemas. There are so many lessons. I don't even know where to start or how to summarize this conversation. I personally found it inspirational and got goosebumps several times when Jay was talking. I just really highly recommend you listen to this if you are a creative and you want to do more work that is impactful and is really aligned with your values. If you did enjoy today, please send this to someone, because I know there are so many people out there that will find this episode useful. So rewind about 5 years, and I remember having a conversation with you. One of your main goals was to record or produce a feature-length documentary alongside running your film production studio. And on Saturday, you have got the premiere of that film, and it's going to be released nationwide in the UK. So just talk to me about what were one or two of the challenges or blockers 5 years ago that were really preventing you from working on this documentary and doing more of your sort of passion projects?
Essentially, running a small business, whatever space you're in, is really time consuming. So it was trying to work out, how do I achieve something as huge and like a big, hairy, audacious goal like producing my first feature film, as well as running a successful video production agency. And I wasn't sure if both would be possible to do, but I think we got clarity in our chat that we had in terms of, can I intertwine the two? Can my video production company allow me to create meaningful films? And that's the reason I wanted to be a filmmaker, was so that I would, not just to help brands and businesses win using video, but to create meaningful projects that made an impact from my social or political conscious point of view. So the key was really just making a decision to do both. It was like, okay, we need to find a way to be better organized, to just really crush it as well in terms of weekends and evenings, and really just put the hours in and make it happen. Like, no excuses, make it happen. And our chat really helped me work that out.
Yeah, and I remember one of the things that I was really surprised by was that you didn't just make time to start planning and filming this documentary. You also really started doubling down on the business. And I think in a space of 12 months, you actually managed to double your turnover, if I remember rightly.
Yeah, that's correct. And I put that down to, when you're working on something that you love, there's a different energy about you in other areas. So I kind of took that energy, well, maybe whether it's a high frequency or just a different level of momentum, into my everyday, day-to-day work for the production company as well. And I truly believe that that made a huge difference. Like, by making time to work on the passion project, it positively impacted every other area of the business as well. And that was a knock-on effect that I didn't see coming, actually.
Yeah. So just paint a picture for us. Let's like rewind back to that time. It was you and Andy, and then I think you had a few freelancers, and you were quite stuck in the business, weren't you? In the sense that like most things sort of relied on you. You were doing a lot of the sales. Andy was doing a lot of the delivery and project management. What was really getting in the way back then of you creating the time and the space? Like, just paint us a bit of picture. What was going on day to day, week to week?
I think the biggest blocker was I was worried that by taking time to work on a passion project that doesn't result in, let's say, income or finances straight away. In fact, it just costs money. That my day-to-day life and the day-to-day business would suffer because, like you said, a lot of the sort of new business development, networking, sales, cash flow, directly depends on the input that I was putting into the business. And that's a responsibility that, weighs heavy. You got staff to pay, you got costs to pay. So there was a bit of a blocker for me that if I took time away from doing that activity, that it would affect, the business cash flow, it affects, our personal lives. We've got mortgages to pay, etc. So that was a bit of a blocker. But like I said previously, in fact, I managed to, by good scheduling, by putting in the hours and the discipline where it mattered, to actually grow revenue because I was in a state of flow and my discipline level increased.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And one of the things that you said before was you just decided that this had to happen. Do you remember the point when you made that decision in your head?
I do, yeah. I was at a Grant Cardone 10X conference, and those type of places where you're in those environments of listening to people that have achieved big goals, achieved their dreams, achieved stuff that maybe on paper, their background, you wouldn't expect them to achieve. It was one of those moments where I was like, I've wanted to do this for years, but I've been waiting for the right time. There's never a right time. There's never a right time. You just got to start the process. And I just said, I'm going to start. I don't have the finances to make this film. I don't even know exactly what it's going to look like, but let's just get the ball rolling. And that's how I saw it. It was just like stepping stones to get to the next step. And then you start to build momentum and things start to fall in place and opportunities fall in your lap. But you have to start. I guess the first thing is making the decision, say, I'm going to make it. And then, just get to the next step, get to the next step. That was how I saw it. Because it's such a mammoth task for anyone that's made a feature film, or maybe even in your case, you've written a book. Getting started is actually the hardest part. Once you get started and you just keep momentum, getting to the next goal, things start to snowball. And I found that was the case definitely with producing The Divided Island.
I find like a lot of creatives, myself included, fall into this trap where I think because we are thinkers and can be a little bit neurotic, it's almost like we want to know all of the steps before we commit to something. But I think there's such power, and you're an example of that, in just deciding, like, whether it's growing your business, making a feature film, working on a particular side project, whatever it is, you have to decide internally. Like, that's when momentum starts, right? When you make that internal decision, I'm going to do this, like, it's going to happen, it's going to be a thing. And then just being okay with, like you said, not knowing what is it going to look like and how am I going to do it and all of that stuff. It's like, I'm just going to find a way. Can you think of some other examples of where those two principles helped you kind of grow your business?
I mean, from the very off, like when we were film graduates at film school at 22 years old, we had no idea what running a business was all about. We were just two 22-year-old filmmakers, experiencing sort of producing and directing uni projects. So it was the same with that. We were like, let's just do it. Like, let's just set up our own production company, step by step, go with it. And with, a hunger and a desire for personal development, for coaching, for speaking to mentors, to learning, pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, networking up, all of these things, yeah, you just find the way. So it was very similar process. I mean, I always believe that it's not about actually your talent. Like, I believe it's more about most of the successful people that I've sort of met. It's more about their passion, belief, and discipline to stick to something. That those are areas that I see successful people really making a difference and achieving big goals. And that's the same for me. I don't think I'm the most talented filmmaker in the world, but my work ethic and persistence is what I think gives me an edge.
Yeah, I love that. And so you decided that you were going to do this thing. You were at a Grant Cardone conference. You made that commitment to yourself. You got organized. It wasn't just plain sailing, right? So what were some of the challenges and obstacles that came up first of all when you made this commitment?
Many challenges. I mean, just from a logistics point of view, that decision was made pre-COVID, and then COVID hit and the whole world changed. Getting money out of people to raise investment during a time where there was money instability was not easy. Filming was not easy. Traveling the world, traveling to Cyprus and filming was difficult during COVID restrictions. Just in personal life, there was a lot going on during that time as well for most people. So I couldn't have had the more difficult world environment and personal environment to make this film. But at the same time, having the passion for the film is what helped me get through that difficult period of life as well. So I think it was almost a blessing as well that I had that film project happening during that difficult time.
Yeah. Let's unpack that a bit because we haven't actually touched on the context. So what was the original reason? What was the original driver behind you making this feature film?
When I was 17 years old and I made the decision that I was going to be a filmmaker, I turned around to my mum and I said, Mum, I'm going to film school and I'm going to be learning how to be a filmmaker. And one day I'm going to make a film on the Cyprus problem. And she was like, I believe in you. You can do it. I know if you put your mind to it, you can do it. And that was 20 years ago. And my driver for wanting to make a film about the Cyprus problem was because, like many conflicts in the world, there's two sides to every story. And I think if you only tell one side of the story, it can create more division, more hate. And for me, it was important to create a documentary that told the history of the Cyprus problem in a more truthful way, less propaganda way, and that created empathy and understanding for both sides. And the Cyprus problem has been going on for 60 years. It's not the only conflict in the world. We're in a really unstable time of the world. And I believe as a filmmaker, it's my responsibility and duty to make a difference with my skill set. And that might sound a bit egotistical or a bit like, even when I say it, sometimes it can feel uncomfortable, but it's just a belief of mine. And I had that belief as a 17-year-old that, I'm good at something. I'm a good filmmaker. I need to use my skill set, not just to help brands make money or businesses make money, but to do better in the world and leave a positive impact.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why I loved working with you. One of the reasons why I wanted to have this conversation all these years later, because that's so aligned to my vision and to why I do what I do. And helping people like you to actually go out and make a positive impact in the world is kind of what gets me out of bed in the morning. And I think one of the things I really enjoyed about working with you was that you didn't ever stop. It wasn't ever like, oh, I've got these ideas now and like that's okay. And I'm kind of working on them. It was, I've got these ideas. I've just gone to this Grant Cardone thing. I've implemented this, I've implemented that. And just kind of seeing you on that trajectory was inspiring, to be honest. And knowing that not only were you, like you said, kind of helping brands and doing all those things, but you were also talking about problems that you really cared about was inspiring. And so for anyone that doesn't really know about the Cyprus problem, without sort of giving the whole film away and people should go and see it because it's actually going to be in cinemas, can you just give us a little bit of context in terms of what is the Cyprus problem and why did you feel like it was so important to make a film about it?
So, yeah, I mean, I've made a 90-minute film. I could have probably made a 10-part documentary on this. But in a nutshell, the beautiful island of Cyprus, which sits in the Eastern Mediterranean, is divided by its two main communities. It's Greek Cypriot community that live in the south. It's Turkish Cypriot community that live in the north. And there is a UN buffer zone called the Green Line where they monitor and basically keep the peace. And they've been there for 60 years. And there was a civil war pretty much in the 50s, 60s, and 70s that divided and partitioned the island. But the history of Cyprus has been let's say, spoken about usually from a Western point of view and only a one-sided point of view, and that just didn't sit right with me. It's like most of the conflicts in the world. There's always two sides to every story, and if you only tell one side, it can make one side look like the aggressor and one side look like the victim, and that just creates more division, more hate. So it was important for me to really tackle this film and show the empathy.
Tell me a little bit about your story, your background. How did you come about this as a problem that you wanted to tackle?
So I'm Turkish Cypriot, and my business partner Randy is Greek Cypriot. And in North London, we grew up in a community that was very mixed: Turkish Cypriots, Greek Cypriots together, which is not like life on the island. There's a physical divide on the island, and Greek and Turkish Cypriots do not mix the way we do in the UK, especially in North London. So when we were 16, we would sort of go back to Cyprus for summer holidays, spend time with our cousins out there, etc. And then we'd come back and we'd have different stories as to why this island was divided. And it was like, we'd have these debates and it'd be like, wow, how is your understanding of this history so different to my understanding of the history? But by speaking to each other and challenging each other, we got to, closer to the truth, which is always somewhere in the middle. So that was us. And that's still to this day a problem. If you don't know the true history, if you haven't mixed with the other side, if you haven't spoken to the other side, if you haven't seen the other side's pain and trauma, it's very hard to have empathy and understanding and move forward. So that was really my desire. And my parents, really raised us to look at the conflict with a more balanced perspective, even though our family were refugees, we lost loved ones and really suffered from the conflict. As a first generation immigrant, I always still felt a connection and responsibility to do something good that could help my ancestral home.
What do you hope that people get from watching this film?
I hope people learn and feel, and it's not just a learn and feel exercise for Cypriots. I believe anyone who's interested in society, in world affairs, in war, division, nationalism, these type of subjects, will be able to connect with this film. From the test screenings, we've had many people of many different ethnicities, whether you're British, you're Indian, you're Irish, have been able to connect with it because there's similarities across many global conflicts in the world. So I hope people will be able to have a bit more empathy and understanding and see that there's nuance to global conflict.
So I know there will be lots of people listening who run film studios, and I've heard people say that they want to make feature films, or even if they don't run a film studio and they have a design studio, they want to work on some kind of internal project. So I'd love to get down to the nitty-gritty of how did you actually get to the point where not only did you find the time to produce the film and actually make it, but it's now in cinemas?
Step by step. I mean, it was really a step-by-step process. So obviously, like any major film has pre-production, production, post-production, and then distribution. That's the process of conceptualizing a film, producing a film, and distributing a film. It's those four steps. But it was really just getting to the next stage. So the hardest bit of filmmaking is actually fundraising. Like, to raise the capital to produce a high quality production, it's not easy unless you have a lot of profit in your own business and you can do it off your own back, or if you have rich parents. But neither were the case for us. So I had to put in my own capital. I did put in a lot of my own capital into this, but I went to some of my clients and raised money that way as well. So I used my network in terms of my corporate clients and commercial clients and see who wanted to be part of this project from an executive producer point of view, from an associate producer. And that's how I raised money. And people want to be involved with projects that are doing good. And I think people believed in me, they believed in my passion, and were ready to help me tell the story that I wanted to tell. So that's key, really. Without the money, without the finance, nothing can really happen. Because I guess, I could have done it all myself, but it wouldn't be the film it is today. I needed to pay a professional camera operators. I needed to pay professional editors, color graders, music composers, You could take shortcuts with this type of stuff, but a great movie is made by a collaboration of a great team, and that needs finance. So finance is the hardest part of any film, and that was the place. That's how I got over the line, really, with the finance side of it. And then production was just done over a period of time, weekends, evenings, holidays. I reduced my holidays and was going out to Cyprus and shooting instead. And then had a couple of days of going to see the family in Cyprus as well. So it's like double teaming my holidays with production time. And in terms of the distribution side of it, again, that's, I would say, if you bookmark raising finance and distribution as the most difficult parts, I actually think the production part as a filmmaker is second nature. We've been doing it for 15 years. But the distribution side was new to us, and I teamed up with people that had experience in this area, and with the right mentoring and consultancy, we managed to get it in cinemas nationwide, which is exciting.
Yeah, I was going to say, how does it feel now? Like looking back and telling me this story and looking back on your journey, like how does it feel now to know that you've got a feature film that you wanted to produce for more than 20 years in national cinemas in the country that you live in?
It feels amazing. It really does. And I get emotional thinking about it, because as a 17-year-old, all you've got is like this ambition and this belief. But deep down, you're like, can I actually do this? There's always that question in your head. Can I actually do this? And 20 years is a long time to work on a goal. Every bit of self-development, every bit of training, every bit of, waking up early to go hustle, to go to networking meetings, to close deals, to put aside money for this type of stuff. It's like, you got to give yourself a pat on the back to say, well done for sticking at it. And I think that discipline side of it is the hardest part. Many people are passionate and ambitious, but they lack the discipline to see through their passion and their ambition. And I think that discipline has what's allowed me to get to this stage.
Yeah, man, it's inspiring. And what I would love to dig into a little bit is your skills as a salesperson, because one thing that was quite easy for me working with you as a coach early on was that you already had a appetite for sales. You weren't somebody that needed convincing to go to networking events and close deals. You just wanted to do more of them, and you wanted them to be higher value. So what are some skills that you've utilized in this process to do those two things, raise finance and get the right distribution partners that relate to kind of sales and that maybe people can learn from in terms of getting the right clients or getting bigger clients or getting projects off the ground?
Well, I think the first thing is passion is important, because when your passion shines through, people are engaged, and people want to be and work with people that have something exciting going on. So I think having passion for what you do is key. And then the discipline side of it is like doing the numbers. So this is something that I got from you. It's like how many conversations you need to have to get that deal over the line. And that was the same with raising finance for this film. How many of my clients do I need to approach? Do I need to show the trailer for the film? Because that was the first step. Show them the trailer, tell them how I want them to get involved. But it's a numbers game. The more people you do that with, the more people you're going to get on board. And that was, something that I'm grateful for, that I learned from you. But just sales, even to now, it's like selling tickets. Now it's, depending on the cinema, it's like £10 or £15 to go watch the film. And every day I'm making sure that I am promoting it and selling tickets, because it matters. Every single sale matters. It makes a big, big difference. I learned very early on that if you learn how to sell and you learn how to sell effectively, you have your entire destiny in your hands. You really do. Like if I didn't spend all those years becoming a better salesperson, I wouldn't have been able to make this film. Without a sale, there's no creation. And I think that's one thing I would really recommend any creative, is to become better in this area, because learning, all that time I spent learning and training in sales has helped me achieve my dream of producing a feature film that's in cinemas. Without sales, that wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, just preaching to the choir. But yeah, it's just such an important topic, because there are so many creatives that not only shy away from sales, but when I have conversations with people, I often hear this idea or concept. Like, I don't need lots of money. Like, I'm just happy if I can just pay my bills, then things are good. But I think it's such a small-minded way of operating a business, because you've just demonstrated that actually, if you want to have real impact in the world, you actually need to raise a lot of money. And like, the more money you have, the more impact you can make. It's just a tool to be able to do things. So I don't know, is there anything that you want to add, or we can just kind of jam out on this, but is there anything you want to add in terms of like the relationship between creativity, impact, and money?
It's a difficult one. It's a difficult one because sometimes as a creative, you got to take on jobs you don't want just to get that bread and butter money in. And over the 15 years of business, that's definitely been the case, and it's not a utopia that you always get the type of jobs you want. Hopefully you can get to a position where you can do that. But I think in the real world, sometimes you got to say yes to some jobs that actually just pay the bills. But it helps because when you pay those bills, you can use that money and move that money to do projects that actually do mean something to you. So that is a strategy that can work. But so much of it is really mindset, Matt. It's like your relationship with money will impact how successful you are as a business person. I believe that deep, deep down. And it's something I've had to work on. Now, I come from a very working class family. So you can imagine I had some money habits that might not have been that great for me. But the only way you can improve them is by changing it yourself, like looking at what successful people do with money and trying to replicate it, and not being scared to have money conversations. I guess that's where a coach or a mentor like you is really helpful, because you'll be able to challenge people's limiting beliefs on money. And I think with creatives, it's probably one of their biggest blockers.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I'm just really curious. Like, I don't think I realized that you raised a lot of funds from existing clients and existing network. And I love that just as an example. I just think it's so cool. What were some of the steps that you actually took? Like, how do I go from a conceptual idea of, hey, I want to do this thing, to actually getting people to back it and put their hand in their pocket?
Well, you got to start. So in my case, it was just getting to the point where I could cut a trailer, because the trailer was emotive, was powerful. People got a sense of what the documentary was going to be about. So I started production, and I started production by, putting my own pretty much life savings into it. And that got me to the point where I created a really strong trailer. And then once I had that trailer, I then approached my clients and said, look, to finish this film, I need your money and capital to get to the next level. And that single piece of content, that trailer, helped me get to the next level, which was to create the final film, which is a 90-minute piece. So it's stepping stones. I mean, well, what's the piece of content you need to create to get to the next level? You don't need, I only needed to create a 3-minute trailer to raise the funds.
How do you get people to buy into an idea that they haven't fully seen yet, if they've just seen a snippet of it?
The trailer does that, because the trailer is like a microcosm of what the film's going to be. But I don't think people are just buying into the idea. I think people are buying into me, and I think that's key for any creative or any agency owner, or anyone that's running a production company, is that the brand of the company does matter, and the idea does matter. But most of the time, people are buying people. And I think those people that got involved with the Divided Island, it was because they believed in me, and they wanted to support my vision. And how do you get people to do that? I don't know. There's like 15 years worth of credibility, 15 years of personal branding, 15 years of delivering, being a good person. I mean, there's probably loads of things that have impacted that.
Yeah, absolutely. Talk to me about the feeling of investing your life savings to get this project off the ground.
It feels risky, isn't it? It's a big bet. You're putting a big bet in the project and yourself. But isn't that what entrepreneurship is about? I mean, if you're not willing to put your life savings in, how am I going to convince anyone else to put money in? Because an investor's going to say, what have you put into this? And they did say that. They did have those discussions. You could get away with it and say, oh, yeah, I'm just putting in the sweat equity. But if you put in the sweat equity and you've put in your life savings, then what does that say to the investor?
Yeah. So this podcast is called Creative Courage for a reason. And I think we've already touched on so many different nuanced examples of courage here. But just talk to me about the balance in your head, because I always think about it as like a scale, right? And there's this, oh shit, what's going to happen if this goes wrong? Oh, what's going to happen if this goes well? Like, can you remember any of the kind of internal dialogue or anything that you talked yourself through that allowed you to move forward with putting your own personal money into this project?
Creating a feature film is not always the best investment, and many producers and even Hollywood will explain that feature films are risky business. They don't always make a return of investment. And I was very open with my producers and people that come on board as investors about this. But I always saw it as, okay, even if I don't make my life savings back from like the sale of the film or how well the film does in terms of box office, etc., what I would have learned from the process of making this film will allow me to make that money back and multiple, because I've achieved such a big goal. That's how I saw it.
Yeah, that's literally one of the things I love about you, is that you very much look at skills as almost like an invaluable asset. So I remember when we were talking about sales and we were talking about coaching, and you were like, I don't even care if I make a sale in the time that we're actually working together. I know that the skills that I'm learning here are going to make me this return on investment, whether it takes me 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever. Like, I'm going to make this money back. I've got no doubt about that. And I think that's something that I find inspiring about you, is the fact that you just look at what skills am I collecting? Who am I becoming as a result of this? Because, once you've had money and once your business starts to make money, you realize it is just a number, and like it comes and it goes. And sometimes you have more of it and sometimes you have less of it. And the thing I think me and you share is that it's about who you become as a result of going through that process. It's like investing in the mentorship or investing in your own project or whatever it is. So I'm curious, like, what skills have you learned as a result of this, and who do you think you are now compared to who you were 5 years ago?
I don't think I've become anyone new. It's just improvements. It's being better at time management, being better at raising funds, being better at, as a filmmaker, being a better director, being a better storyteller, being a better leader, because the producer director is the leader of the film. So like all of these skills have developed. I don't think that they're not skills that I didn't have before. They're just improved versions at a higher level of those skills. And they're invaluable. They really are invaluable.
Can I ask, like, just to give people some context, like, how much money did you have to raise to make this film?
So I'll give you a ballpark, but it's somewhere between 100 and 150K.
Okay. And so my next question is, you've done the trailer, you've got people on board, you've filmed the thing. How the hell do you start getting it in cinemas? Like, when I actually saw that on your Instagram, that it was like being in cinemas, I thought maybe he's convinced like one cinema to show it, but then it was like another one, and it was another one, and then like it's actually like in cinemas. It just kind of blows my mind, because I've never actually known anyone personally that's had a film in cinemas. So like, yeah, how did that happen, and where do you even start with that?
Getting it in cinemas, getting a film in cinemas has always been a lifelong dream. As you can imagine, going to film school, getting your movies in cinemas, seeing your name come out at the end of the title credits to say, directed by. This is stuff that I dreamed of, visualized, meditated on, done all of that. So I do have to pinch myself a little bit to know that I've actually made it happen. But the first step is to make a film that's worthy of going into cinemas. So, and I believe we've done that with The Divided Island. How it actually came about was, my goal was to get a more traditional distribution, which it still is to get a video on demand platform like Netflix over the line. Netflix, if you're watching, you have to take this film on. You'll be making a mistake if you don't.
They probably will be watching this.
Yeah, let's hope so. So that was always my goal. And I thought, well, is a documentary really theatrical enough for people to go to the cinema and watch it? But I spoke to a distribution consultant who watched the film and was really blown away. And they said, look, Jay, you've got a really strong piece of work here that people will go out to the cinemas and see, and the cinemas will be interested in showing. So that was the process. So, I trusted this distribution consultant. We worked together. And There's basically a strategy to pitch it to cinemas, and if the cinemas agree that they believe people will pay money to come and watch this film, they'll take it on. And to a lot of people's surprises, we've sold out screens, and we're still, nearly 2 weeks away from being in cinemas. So that's quite rare for a documentary. Most people have never been to the cinema to watch a documentary. So the fact that we're selling out screens shows that there's a real desire for people to watch this film. But I think a lot of that comes down to my marketing. Over the past 4 years of making this film, I've been on it with Instagram, with TikTok, with LinkedIn, promoting the journey of making this film. And I think I've created a good audience that when I said it was ready to be seen in cinemas, ticket sales started happening.
So you built a wait list basically, and you showed the behind the scenes.
That's exactly it. Yeah. I believe a lot of the people that have booked on to watch this at cinemas have been from my social media following for The Divided Island and my own personal network. And, 4 years is a long time to build up anticipation. I had people messaging me from all over the world. When is this film going to be released? When is it going to be released? So when we did get a cinema release date, people were booking on immediately.
Amazing. And is it going to be available anywhere else? Like for people that want to watch it internationally, is there any way of them going to be able to get a hold of it once it's been through its cinema release?
Yeah, so we're working with a distribution consultant who basically we've now secured our UK release, which is in cinemas. Then hopefully we'll have a video on demand release. But that video on demand release will hopefully be global as well. So whether you're in the US, Canada, Australia, Cyprus, Greece, or Turkey yourself, hopefully either by the end of this year or early next year, it'll be online.
And you're hoping for something like an Amazon Prime, a Netflix, an Apple, like a big distributor, right?
That's right. One of the big streaming platforms would be ideal, an ideal home for The Divided Island.
Amazing. What advice would you have to somebody who's listening to this, runs a film production studio, and has a dream, maybe not even of making a feature film, but maybe even just working on some more personal projects? What have they got to do?
Just make the decision. It's like, why are you doing what you do? Like, do people actually ask themselves, why are you doing what you do? Because if you ask yourself that question, you might get into a bit of a deeper understanding of yourself. Well, I knew I wanted to be a filmmaker to make these type of films. Now, it took me 15 years to get to the point where I could release a film like this to the world. But everything I'd done in that 15-year period was to get to this point. And I think people need to really tune in as to why they do what they do. What do you want your life to look like when you look back at your career? Like, do you want to have full control over that, or are you just letting it unfold and seeing what happens based on other people's dreams and not your own dream?
Yeah, 100%, man. I really think that is a epic place to draw a line. And I would love to maybe do another one of these in 6 months, 12 months, 18 months time when we know a little bit more about where this film's going. But I'd also love to watch it myself so I could ask you some questions. If there are people listening to this other than the Netflix producers, where can people connect with you? Where can people find out more about The Divided Island?
Sure. So if you go to www.thedividedisland.com, that's our website where our trailer is living, and you'll see all the cinema locations across the UK where you can book and watch the film. We're out in cinemas from the 1st of November.
Amazing, man. Jay, thank you so much for having this conversation. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Matt. My pleasure.
Before you leave, if you found this episode valuable, please hit the subscribe button. Also, if you are a creative business owner doing more than 10K a month and you want to grow and scale without working longer hours or hiring a massive team, then I have something you may be interested in. We have just developed a tool that will give you a custom growth strategy based on exactly where you are in your business right now. So you can stop consuming lots of random content and trying to figure things out on your own and actually get something personalized to you. You will also receive a free copy of my book, and it will point out relevant chapters. If you'd like to take the scorecard, it's totally free. You just have to click the link in the show notes or connect with me on LinkedIn, and you will see a link in my bio. Thanks for listening. This is the Creative Courage Podcast.